Thanks very much for that great overview of this system. I'm an economist. I'm going to look at this from a slightly different way. Look at more numbers, and in basically two themes of what I'm going to be talking about today. One is that the existing trade remedies that have been used in many instances, especially in the steel industry over the last 30 years, has succeeded in disrupting trade for particular products, but they haven't been as effective as one might think in terms of what I would argue is probably the most important goal, which is to keep employment up in the steel industry, for example. Because there are lots of holes in the system. There are ways to get around the trade sanctions that are involved with anti-dumping and also safeguards. And so one of the possible lessons from this is, and I think the Wilbur Ross is certainly probably aware of this, that the existing way of doing things has not been as protectionist as maybe they might want. That maybe they need to be more aggressive, more creative, to have a broader set of restrictions than is existing under the way we have done things in the past. And one thing that we can't really assume is that things are going to be done like they've been done in the past. Now, broadly speaking, I would argue that many of these policies that have been in place, trade remedies, or as Matt noted, reaction to perceived unfair trade policies of various types, to give an opportunity for companies and employees to kind of catch their breath and adjust to the new situation. That's more the safeguard. To increase or at least stop the decrease of domestic employment or production. And these have traditionally been initiated by either domestic firms and sometimes unions or combinations thereof. That's very, very few self-initiations. Now, I've been interested in the steel industry for a long time. I worked as in a steel mill when I was in college in the summers. I was a hooker, and it was a very well-paying job. You hooked steel plate, but I got to go through college because I had steel mill. I was back there in the 1970s, back in the good old days, when they had a lot of people working. Now, one of the things that you see, and this is from 1973 to 2002, is that the employment's on the right scale. It's the dark blue line. Employment in the industry has gone down and gone down and gone down, down. It's now roughly, depending how you measure it, about 100 or less than 100,000 workers in the industry. There had been a number of instances where have been special trade policy mechanisms by the president, trigger price mechanism by Jimmy Carter in the 70s, Reagan comprehensive steel quotas in the 1980s, what's not shown here, but the steel tariffs in 2002, plus dozens of anti-dumping cases, countervailing duty cases. And I don't know, it doesn't look to me like it's really maintained a lot of employment in this industry. What it does is it disrupts, it moves the sources around, but the people that believe that they're going to be protected, their jobs are going to be maintained because of steel trade protection, I don't think there's a lot of evidence of it, at least in the steel industry. And to give you a sense of how disruptive these can be, I just pulled out one set of firm-specific duties on anti-dumping, something that a lot of people don't understand. It is individual products, very narrowly defined products, carbon and certain alloy steel wire rod, and that has has chemical properties that can be very narrowly defined. And here's a group of countries, and these are the duties that have been placed on them, ranging from 4% to 369%. This reflects the discretion that Matt talked about, the particular nature of the pricing, the cost data, whether or not an economy is deemed to be a non-market economy. But, you slap these duties on for a period of time, at the very least, you start to have a readjustment of production from one place to another. And one of the things about the market, it always tries to find a way to equilibrate. If you can't get products from Mexico, you'll get them from China or some other place, if you do it the traditional way. Now, the steel safeguards in 2002, another example, this was initiated by President Bush. So essentially there was a signal, at least I interpreted, to the International Trade Commission, we want you to approve this. Now, I don't know whether that was the cause for the ITC to approve it, but it was important because in the past, these global safeguards would be often past the ITC, very expensive for the petitioners to go through the process, and then the president would say, nope. Okay. One of the things that's different about safeguards is that the president has the final say about what type of restriction to impose, whether it be a quota, whether it be a tariff. They really set the parameters of the policy that's in place. They don't have to do what the ITC has recommended. So a more interested president in restricting trade might get more action out of this. So the safeguard in 2002, it has no necessary connection to unfair trade. The serious injury was found. 30% tariff on, quote, all steel products. Now, these are steel prices in the run-up to this order. So the presidential 201 order is the safeguard. So March 2002, and you see a remarkable increase in the price of some of these primary products in steel. So exactly what you would expect. You have higher prices as a consequence of the tariff. Whoops. But, see, that was, this is, rats. This is a PDF now, not a PowerPoint. Well, within a year, the prices had gone back to almost exactly where they were in 2002. Within a year, this spike in prices went back down. And I happened to be at the Council of Economic Advisors at the time, and it's like, I had to explain what was happening. Why are the prices gone back down with a 30% tariff? It's because, this is not going to, because of loopholes in safeguards. Many targeted countries were affected. You had disruptions of the trade in the particular countries that were subject to the duty, but importantly, NAFTA countries were exempt, small developing countries were exempt, and so essentially what happened is that trade started to flow not from Korea and Europe and China, but instead through Canada, Mexico, India. So the existing global safeguard had relatively little impact, I would argue, in the long-term viability of the steel industry. It gave them maybe a little bit of that breathing room, but not much. Now, that's not going to show up because it's PDF, but essentially imports got back to almost exactly 20 million tons in the year after the safeguard that they did before. Big loophole, with NAFTA especially. Now, if you look at the China tire safeguard, which another round of our presenters today were involved in. So we've got two big safeguard measures covered with the people in this room. United Steelworkers initiates this. This is against China alone. ITC finds the requisite injury. Presidential decision to impose tariffs of 35%. 30%, 25% over 3 years. So what do you expect? You impose tariffs against China. Well, oddly enough, we find other places to buy it. Now, this is from Steve Charnovitz and Bernard Hochman's paper back in 2012. Look at China. Indeed, you reduced passenger tires from China. You can send out a press release that it was a success. You can mention it in the State of the Union, that it's a success because we have reduced imports from China. But what you did is you just imported it from other places. Now, almost 1,200 jobs saved. at only about $900,000 per job, which seems a little high, but you know, if it's my job, it seems like a perfectly good use of U.S. GDP. But you know, I've got tenure, so you know. Now, so what I would say about this as an economist looking at the way safeguards and anti-dumping has been used in the past is that it's really kind of piecemeal. At least if you're going to be consistent with WTO rules and NAFTA rules, which has been how we've run these things, but they're often not broadly effective to get the goals that you probably want to get. And what makes me nervous is to really have the kind of impact that workers might expect. You might have to be much more aggressive. You might have, I mean, if we were to leave NAFTA, for example, we wouldn't have to exclude Canada and Mexico from an agreement. Maybe you have an anti-dumping case not against cold-rolled steel less than between 7 and 10 millimeters, but against all flat steel products. Very broad, and do it against everybody. A willing administration that wants to be aggressive about this really has a lot of leeway under existing law. It's just a really costly way to go about helping these people. And it's not clear that it would really help workers in the long run. At least that's not been the experience. The future's not always like the past, but it's a good place to start. And I just really don't think there's any reason to believe that the Trump administration is not going to be aggressive on this. You know, this is, I don't think the first couple of weeks would make me think, oh, well, you know, I think a push, you know, I think this is important to President Trump. I think he really cares about this. And he's likely to go as far as the law will allow. But again, coming at it from the standpoint of someone who doesn't really believe that the current system is working that well. He may be right. I don't know. Depends on if you ask somebody in Youngstown, Ohio. They don't think it's working. And as an economist, you know, I think, oh, well, you know, we'll impose higher duties on foreign products and prices will go up and people will be all upset. Frankly, I don't think we're going to see 250,000 people on the mall if prices in Walmart go up by 5%, because people won't even know that that's the reason. This is a potentially this could get a lot of popular support, even if the Orthodox trade people amongst us think it's a bad idea, because it appeals to a lot of folks out in many parts of the country. So let me stop there, and let me just say one more thing. Matt has mentioned this, but I want to emphasize this as well. 3 new members of the International Trade Commission. Okay, there's 6 members. Any tie vote goes to the petitioner. So you have 3 new people at what has been traditionally one of the blocking points to new trade actions. So you can put in people that have a very, very aggressive way of thinking about this, and a willing president who would say, yeah, it's potentially a new world. But really interesting. So, okay, so let's go to Q&A.